In March 2020, schools closed, stores shut down, and the world went quiet due to the spread of the COVID-19 virus. However, one thing that didn't stop was the constant flow of news and information. Every hour, there was another breaking headline, rumor, or update on the virus. People were desperate for answers, and the media was well aware. Some outlets focused on spreading calm and clarity, while others leaned into fear. Headlines shouted infection numbers, death tolls, and worst case scenarios. Social media flooded with miracle cures and conspiracy theories. In a time when facts mattered most, the truth was often buried under the noise. In this video, we are going to explore how context, sensationalism, and confirmation bias shaped the way that news was reported during the early days of COVID-19, and how that reporting changed the way that people saw the world around them.
In early 2020, the situation was very unpredictable. Scientists were still trying to figure out what the virus was and how it spread. Governments were scrambling for answers, and journalists within the 24 hours news cycle had pressure to give constant updates because it would drive up their engagement and therefore their income. And whether that information was true or not didn't matter as long as people were reading it. And this constant uncertainty led to lots of confusion. Official guidance was often vague and constantly changing, and early guesses and unverified claims started sounding like facts to people. And these constant shifts made it hard to know what to trust, so when articles came out, like one saying you could catch COVID from touching your mail or packages, people believed it because fear made it feel true. And everyone had their own experience with the pandemic, getting sick, losing someone, or just wanting life to go back to normal. So it was very common for people to trust their friends' and neighbors' posts rather than government or political sites because you relate to people. And all that emotion made people more likely to click, share, and believe dramatic headlines, even when they weren't accurate. So in the end, that mix of fear and confusion and emotion created a powerful context that didn't just shape the news, it shaped how people understood and reacted to it as well.
When people are scared and uncertain, they pay closer attention to anything that promises answers. News outlets knew this, and many started using fear to keep audience engagement up. Sensationalism is when media uses emotional or shocking content, things like fear, danger, to grab attention and keep audiences watching. The focus shifts from informing people to keeping them engaged. During the early days of COVID, this tactic was everywhere. Headlines would use scary keywords, stuff like deadly surges and chaos in hospitals. Even when information was incomplete, stories were told in very dramatic ways that made the threat seem even bigger. The problem is this kind of reporting feeds fear instead of understanding. It made people panic, hoard supplies, and feel overwhelmed. And as people realized how exaggerated some stories were, it chipped away at trust in journalism. So while sensationalism might get attention, it damages public understanding and makes it harder to separate truth from fear.
So confirmation bias is when people favor information that confirms what they already believe in. It can make people ignore facts that don't fit their worldview, reinforce misconceptions, and deepen divisions between groups. During early COVID coverage, different outlets presented very different takes. For example, CNN emphasized the seriousness of the pandemic, while Fox News highlighted uncertainty or downplayed the risks. This divide had real consequences. People were less likely to follow health guidance, debates over masks and social distancing became polarized, and misunderstandings about the virus spread rapidly. Sensationalized headlines made things worse as well, because fear-driven stories reinforced what each audience already wanted to believe. People were blaming the right and the left for different things and claiming they would not become sheep and behave how they wanted to despite the guidelines in the news. The result of this? Echo chambers formed, misinformation spread like wildfire, and it became much harder for people to make informed decisions about their own health.
Fear-driven headlines, confirmation bias, and confusing context didn't just make COVID hard at the moment. It had lasting effects on how people consume media and how news is presented. These dynamics fueled existing political divides, eroded trust in news outlets and public health guidance, and made it harder for people to recognize misinformation. These impacts are still seen today on topics like elections, vaccines, and even global warming.
All of this goes to show why it's so important to understand how concepts like context, sensationalism, and confirmation bias work and how to recognize when they're at play. To protect ourselves, we can background check sources, pause before sharing posts, and ask ourselves whether we're reacting to fact or fear. When we fail to think critically about the media we consume, we lose the ability to navigate news thoughtfully, which is why media literacy matters now more than ever.